the rudder has turned. For the first time ever, there have been actual cuts in spending. Cuts before 2011 were less increases than were supposed to happen. So if the program was going, it was set in let's say the president's budget to go up 8%, if you cut it, it went down to 6%. That was called a cut. That's not going to stop this bleeding. It's not. So we actually cut programs that were unnecessary, that were deeper than a increase. And for that, it worked. It turned the rudder. If you remember, when I got there, the lame duck Congress was talking about increasing the budget. The president, in his State of the Union, said, let's freeze the budget after having made 20% increase in spending over the last 3 years. And then, after that, people were talking about cuts. So there's a question here about Medicare, what's going to happen. In the Rules Committee last week, which I serve on the Rules Committee, Mr. Van Hollen, who is the ranking Democrat on the Budget Committee, and Mr. Ryan, who is the chairman of the Budget Committee, were there to present budgets and alternatives. And so I asked both of them, because here's the document, this has the majority and minority report in it on the budget. And it goes through the details of how they came to the conclusion, what amendments they voted on, what were the votes on that amendment. And in here, you'll see, you can see it, is that picture. That's one of the things that was in this. And so I asked both of them to turn to that page and said, okay, given this page, is it incumbent upon us to act? And for the first time that I know of, they both said yes, that we can't do this. And so they said, yes, it is incumbent that we act. Now, Mr. Van Hollen said he doesn't want to act this way, but he does want to act. So then I asked both of them this question: do you believe, in order to get on the right path, both of you, do you believe there needs to be changes in Medicaid and Medicare? And I was surprised that both said yes. Yes. So that's the first time that I know that that's ever occurred. That both the ranking member and the chairman have agreed that something has got to change, and we've got to get off of this and get onto this. So anyway, there's a picture of where we are. Let me get somebody else here. Yeah.
First, I admire your sense of fiscal responsibility. I think that's terrific. I never knew we had a Bureau of Public Debt. Sounds like a pretty well-secured place to work, unfortunately.
It's been around, I think, since the 1700s, 1800s.
Do you expect to see a budget in 2012, before the election, or
Well,
what's your gut feeling?
the House has passed a budget. The Senate, at least, is going to have to take up a budget, I think. It's going to be hard for them now, given the parliamentarians' ruling just yesterday, for them not to take up a budget. And I think because it only takes 51 votes to amend the budget, and it only takes 51 votes now to take it up. The 60 vote is going to be something that's not going to come into play. I believe there's at least an opportunity. And if you had asked me that question 2 days ago, I would have said no, there's not. Now, is that going to do anything other than get us to a conference and start talking about it? If that happens, that's what would take place. But that's a good thing. If we could just get together and start talking about it, it would be very, very good. And then, does that actually do the appropriations? No, but it sets the skeleton for what would happen in appropriation, and would make it a whole lot easier if everybody was working off the same budget. So we're gonna work off this one, unless there's some sort of opportunity to meet in a conference, determine what both of us could agree on, House and Senate, and then pass a budget. It doesn't have to go to the president. It becomes a resolution that the Congress will write a budget based on that budget, that we write appropriation bills based on that budget. So I am much more encouraged today than I was 2 days ago. Yes.
I'm Lee Stark. I was in the Navy 1959, and we had a policy where if it was an aircraft thing, we'd take the fuel up. If we didn't have good weather, we'd dump the fuel. And I asked them why, and they said if they don't spend the money, they got cut. And so now, 50 years later, I understand that same policy. If you do not spend the money that's in your budget, the next year you're going to be cut by that amount. How come that can't change?
Well, that's not a written rule. It's just thought of as being a written rule. I think we ought to benefit those that do it. Not just say we're not going to go by that. We ought to say you do that and you're going to get benefited by that, because we don't have anybody doing it right now. And so number one, I think that's a great idea to get rid of it. But number two, I think we ought to give them incentive for.
I know DEA as of today, if they don't spend their money, next year they lose that money. And so they'll buy it, they'll wait till the last month of their budget, and they'll go out and buy anything. I mean, they'll literally anything, just to spend that money. And no business, no homeowner, nobody can do that and get away with it.
Well, just as a footnote to that, one of the things that I was interested in when I was in the legislature were the rules that we operated by, and the details, and the opportunity to read bills and other things, and just the orderly process. Because I've found if you're in business and you make a product, if the process is flawed, then what you make is flawed. Well, then same in legislation. If you have a flawed process, then it's bad. So when I became Speaker of the House in Florida, I decided to change the process and to say, okay, number one, we're going to have a lot more detail in our appropriation process. We're going to involve as many people as we can, Republicans and Democrats. We're going to make every member effective in that their vote is effective. We're going to base everything on principle. And we're going to end session at 6 o'clock every day. We're not going to go into the night, because I was a part of a system for 122 years. I wasn't there the whole time. It was operated in a different way. At the end of session, everything kind of grew like that, exponentially. And there was this train wreck at the end, and session would end. And after midnight on the last day of session, you would end up voting on all the major bills, and there wouldn't be 5 minutes of debate, and they would all pass because people just wanted to go home. And I wanted to change all that, push down the pyramid of power, spread out the base so every member could be a player. And the process would be improved. We'd give everybody a chance to read the bills. We would have longer notices. We wouldn't be doing tricks and pulling up this bill and that bill all different times, which is all the things I experienced when I was in the minority. And so when I got to Congress, I didn't lose those ideals. They had a transition team that met even before I was elected. And I went and spoke at that transition team. And I told them that a longer story than what I just gave you. And I asked them, could we not vote after 6 o'clock? Could we separate the votes between committee votes and floor votes, so that you wouldn't be running back and forth trying to get quorums and doing all these things and wasting a bunch of time? Could we, by publication, do all these honoring of the runner-up champion basketball team in the state instead of taking voting time doing that? And you know what? They adopted almost all of those. The 6 o'clock became 7. But still, people will say it's better. You get a chance to read the bills. There's a 3-day waiting period, and so forth. And anyway, they adopted that. One of the things that I have clamored for, that's why I'm on the Rules Committee, I'm hoping at some point in time we'll take up some of these rule changes, which I believe are